The entire airport watched as staff humiliated an old black man. One officer shouted, "Can you even read the signs? Move aside, old man." Another snapped, "Stop wasting our time. People like you always cause trouble." A third worker yelled across the hall, "If you can't afford the ticket, just say it instead of acting confused." The old man stood there, trembling, holding his worn-out backpack while passengers stared, some laughing, some recording. But everything changed in the next 10 seconds because a billionaire suddenly sprinted through the crowd, pushing past security, and stopped right in front of the old man. He grabbed his hands and whispered with a shaking voice, "Sir, I thought I lost you." The entire airport went silent. The staff froze mid-sentence. No one understood why a billionaire was calling this man sir, until he revealed a truth that would shock the entire country. Before we continue, from which country are you watching this story? Let me know in the comments. I love seeing our community from all around the world. And if you enjoy powerful stories like this one, please consider subscribing. Your support truly helps us bring more inspiring content to you.
It was supposed to be an ordinary morning at JFK International Airport, the kind where people rushed with coffees in their hands and luggage dragging behind them. But today, something felt different, like tension was already floating in the air even before sunrise. At the far end of the departure hall, an elderly black man stood quietly near the check-in counter. His name was Elijah Carter, though no one there cared enough to ask. He was around 78 years old, thin, with a small frame, wearing gently faded clothes and holding a worn-out backpack whose straps had been stitched too many times. Elijah wasn't doing anything wrong. He wasn't causing trouble. He was simply trying to understand his boarding pass. But the staff had already made up their mind about him. The first employee, a young woman named Carly, slammed her hand on the counter and shouted, "Sir, I already told you, you're standing in the priority line. You don't belong here." Heads turned. Passengers waiting nearby glanced at the scene with judgment in their eyes. Elijah lowered his gaze and spoke softly, almost apologetically. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to—" Carly cut him off before he could finish. "Can you even read the signs? Move aside, old man." Her voice echoed through the hall. A couple of teenagers in line pulled out their phones, secretly recording. Others snickered. Elijah's hands trembled as he clutched his boarding pass. He squinted at it. His vision wasn't what it used to be, and tried to understand what she meant. I just wanted to know which gate—" Suddenly, another staff member, Officer Tom, stepped in, clearly annoyed. "You're holding up the entire line. People like you always cause trouble." His tone was sharp, dismissive, as if Elijah's very presence was a burden. Passengers kept staring. Some rolled their eyes. None stepped in to help. Elijah took a nervous step back, almost stumbling. He wasn't used to such chaos. He wasn't used to being yelled at. All he wanted was to catch his flight, one he had saved money for over months. He whispered, barely audible, "I'm just trying to get to Atlanta. It's important." But Carly scoffed loudly enough for everyone to hear. "If you can't afford the ticket, just say it instead of pretending to be confused." A wave of murmurs passed through the crowd. Some people laughed. Some looked disgusted. Some just watched like it was entertainment. Elijah's chest tightened. His breath grew shallow. He pressed a hand against the counter to steady himself. Then, a 2-second silence, the kind that feels like the air itself is holding its breath. Suddenly, a voice burst across the hall. "Move! Move out of the way!" People turned their heads sharply. A man in a tailored navy suit was running full speed through the crowd, something billionaires don't do. Not even CEOs, not even rich athletes. Yes, Alexander Reed, one of the most powerful, wealthiest men in the country, was sprinting across the airport with fear in his eyes. His expensive watch flashed as he pushed through the crowd. People stepped aside instinctively. His chest heaved. His face was pale. He wasn't running towards the staff, not towards security, not towards the terminal. He was running towards Elijah. Carly blinked in confusion, then panic. Officer Tom stood frozen. The businessman put his phone down. The teenager stopped recording. Everyone held their breath. Alexander slowed only when he reached the old man. Then he dropped to his knees, grabbed Elijah's shaking hands, and whispered, "Sir, I thought I lost you." The airport went dead silent. Elijah looked confused, shocked, overwhelmed. Passengers stared in disbelief. Why was a billionaire speaking to him with such emotion? Why was he calling this old, humble man, "Sir"? How did they know each other? Carly swallowed hard, suddenly realizing she might have made the biggest mistake of her life. And before anyone could ask questions, Alexander raised his head and said words that would soon become national news. Words that would change everything.
For a long, breathless moment, no one in the airport moved. It felt like time had frozen. The passengers, the staff, even the long lines behind the check-in counter. All eyes were locked on one impossible sight. A billionaire kneeling before an old man everyone had just insulted. Alexander Reed's fingers trembled as he held Elisha's hands in his own. The contrast alone was dramatic, his expensive gold cufflinks touching the frayed cloth of Elijah's old jacket. "Elijah," he whispered again, voice cracking. "Sir, how are you here? I've been looking for you for years." Elijah blinked hard, confused. "Son, I don't understand. Looking for me? Why?" Alexander's jaw clenched. His eyes were watery, his breathing uneven. He looked like a man who had just found something more precious than all the money he had ever earned. People around them leaned forward, drawn in like magnets. Officer Tom swallowed, his earlier arrogance melting into fear. Carly took a small step backward, her face draining of color. Alexander finally stood up, not letting go of Elisha's hand, and turned toward the staff. His voice was no longer shaking. It was sharp, cold, deadly calm. "What?" he asked slowly. "Did you just say to him?" Carly stuttered. He was in the wrong line, sir, and we tried to—" "Tried to what?" he demanded. "Humiliate him? Disrespect him? You were yelling at him like he's nothing." Carly opened her mouth, then closed it. She knew there was no explanation that would save her now. Passengers watched silently, guilt creeping onto their faces. A few lowered their phones. The teenagers who had been recording earlier wiped their screens and tried to hide their nervousness. Elisha tugged lightly on Alexander's sleeve. "Son, it's all right. I don't want trouble." But Alexander shook his head. "No, not this time. Not ever again." The billionaire turned back to the stunned staff. "This man," he said, pointing to Elisha, his voice rising with emotion, "is the reason I am alive today. He is the only reason I ever became anything." A wave of whispers rippled through the crowd. What does he mean? Is the old man his father? Who is this guy? No way! This can't be real! Alexander reached into his suit pocket, his hand trembling slightly as he pulled out an old, folded photograph. He showed it to the staff first, then raised it for the crowd to see. In the picture, a young teenage Alexander, skinny, angry,
lost, standing next to a custodial worker sweeping the hallway of a run-down public school. The custodial worker was Elijah. The crowd gasped. Alexander looked back at Elijah with eyes full of memories. "You haven't changed much, sir. You still look like the strongest man I've ever known." Elijah looked away, embarrassed. "I was just a janitor back then, son." "No," Alexander said sharply, "you were never just anything." He faced the crowd again, his voice loud enough to echo across the entire departure hall. "When I was a kid, I was angry. I was failing school. I was on the edge of getting expelled. My father had left us. My mother worked 2 jobs, and no teacher cared about me." Silence. Except him. He pointed to Elijah. He stayed after hours. He cleaned classrooms all night, but somehow still found the time to sit with me, teach me math, teach me discipline, teach me how to be a man. A woman in the audience gasped softly. Alexander continued, voice cracking. "When no one believed in me, not even myself, he did." He turned back toward Elijah. "You saved me." Elijah shook his head. "I only helped you with homework, son. That's all." Alexander smiled softly, with tears now fully forming. That was enough. More than enough. He faced the staff again. "And today you yelled at him, you mocked him, you humiliated the man who gave me a second chance at life." Carly's lips trembled. Officer Tom's throat tightened. Alexander then gestured around the airport. "All of this," he said, tapping his chest, "everything I've built, every company, every innovation, every achievement, is because of this man." The airport was silent. The kind of silence that hums with guilt, shock, and awe. Passengers looked at Elisha with new eyes, not just as an old man, but as someone important, someone extraordinary, someone who mattered. Elisha wiped a tear from his eye. "Son, I didn't know you remembered me." Alexander laughed softly, shaking his head. "Sir, how could I ever forget the man who saved my life?" And just like that, everything the crowd thought they knew shattered. The rude old man wasn't just an old man. The billionaire wasn't just a billionaire. And this airport scene was no longer just a scene. It was the beginning of a revelation that would shake the entire country.
The airport crowd stood frozen, absorbing the billionaire's words, but none of them were prepared for what came next. Alexander placed a hand gently on Elijah's shoulder. "Sir, they need to know who you really are." Elijah sighed softly, almost embarrassed. "I'm nobody special, son. I was just a man trying to make ends meet." Alexander shook his head. "That's not the truth. Not even close." He turned toward the crowd. "You all think he was just a janitor? That he was just some random old man standing in the wrong line?" Alexander's voice deepened, filled with anger and sorrow. "You have no idea who he is or what this man sacrificed." Elijah shifted uncomfortably, but Alexander continued. "Before he became the janitor at my school, Elijah Carter was a brilliant engineer, one of the best." Gasps spread quickly. Elijah looked down at the floor, memories rising in his eyes. "I wasn't brilliant," he murmured. "I just did what I loved." Alexander ignored his humility. He helped design early aviation safety systems, the ones that saved thousands of lives on flights you all travel every single day. A woman near the front covered her mouth. "That can't be true. An engineer? Him? Why would someone like that become a janitor?" Alexander's voice deepened, filled with anger and sorrow. "You have no idea who he is or what this man sacrificed." Elijah shifted uncomfortably, but Alexander continued. "Before he became the janitor at my school, Elijah Carter was a brilliant engineer, one of the best." Gasps spread quickly. Elijah looked down at the floor, memories rising in his eyes. "I wasn't brilliant," he murmured. "I just did what I loved." Alexander ignored his humility. He helped design early aviation safety systems, the ones that saved thousands of lives on flights you all travel every single day. A woman near the front covered her mouth. "That can't be true. An engineer? Him? Why would someone like that become a janitor?" Alexander inhaled deeply. "That's the part none of you know." He turned back to Elijah, giving him the space to speak if he wished. Elijah hesitated, then slowly nodded. "My wife," he began, voice trembling. "She got sick. Very sick." His hand tightened on the strap of his old backpack. "We spent everything we had on her treatment. Every saving, every piece of jewelry, every asset. And when that wasn't enough, I left my job. I became her full-time caregiver." The hall fell heavy with silence. Elijah swallowed hard. "When she passed, I still had our daughter to take care of. She was young, sensitive, and brilliant in her own way. She wanted to be an artist, a dreamer. But life doesn't always give you space to dream." Alexander's eyes softened with sadness. To feed her, keep a roof over her head, keep her dreams alive, Elijah took whatever work he could. The engineering field had already replaced him. He was too old, too outdated. They turned their backs on him. A painful truth about society echoed through the hall. Elijah continued quietly, almost whispering, "I became a janitor not because I wanted to, but because it was the only job that let me be close to my daughter's school. I could check on her between shifts, walk her home afterward, be a father." His voice wavered. "She died too, a few years after. A heart condition the doctors couldn't fix." A few people in the crowd wiped their eyes. Elijah's shoulders trembled just slightly. "After that, I didn't want much from life. I just tried to do good wherever I could, help a child here and there, clean up after others, keep to myself." Alexander stepped closer, voice thick with emotion. "And all that time, he never told anyone who he really was. He didn't brag. He didn't complain. He didn't ask for pity. He just helped people." People listened with shame rising on their faces. "He helped me," Alexander said softly, "more than anyone else in my life ever did. He didn't just teach me math. He taught me discipline, respect, and kindness, the things my father never did. And everything I built began with those lessons he gave me." Elijah's eyes glistened. "Son, I just wanted you to do better than I did." Alexander smiled sadly. "I did better because you were there." Then he faced the crowd once more. "So when you yelled at him, mocked him, treated him like he was trash, you weren't insulting a random old man. You were insulting a forgotten genius. A man who saved lives, raised a family alone, and built future leaders quietly in the shadows." The crowd lowered their heads. Some cried. Some hid their shame. Some stared at Elijah like they were seeing humanity for the first time. And this was still not the end of Elijah's story. There was one more truth that the country had yet to hear. A truth Elijah had kept buried for years, until today. As the crowd processed Elijah's painful past, Alexander noticed the old backpack clutched tightly in Elijah's fragile hands. Its faded fabric, worn zippers, and stitched edges hinted it had survived decades of struggle. Alexander pointed gently. "Sir, you still have it?" Elijah hesitated. His fingers trembled on the zipper. "I never travel without it," he said softly. "It's all I have left." Carly, the staff member who had insulted him moments earlier, watched nervously. She sensed something monumental was hidden in that bag, something that could make her earlier words look even worse. Alexander urged him carefully. "May I show them what's inside?" Elijah nodded. "Go ahead, son." Alexander slowly unzipped the backpack. Inside was a small bundle wrapped in soft, aging cloth. The billionaire unwrapped it with reverence, like he already knew what he held. Gasps rippled through the hall. It was an old leather notebook, edges frayed, cover cracked, pages yellowed with time. But despite its condition, it looked important. Elijah's voice grew shaky. "This notebook, it holds all my designs, my inventions, my dreams, the ones I never got to build." The crowd leaned in. Alexander opened the first page. Diagrams, blueprints, complex formulas, aircraft structures, safety systems decades ahead of their time. Officer Tom blinked in disbelief. A woman whispered, This looks like something NASA would use." Someone else murmured, "This can't be real." Elijah continued quietly, remembering everything he had lost. "These were meant to be part of a new emergency landing system, one I created after losing a friend in a plane crash. It could have changed aviation forever." "Why didn't you submit them?" someone asked softly. Elijah gave a sad smile. "I did, but my company dismissed it. They said I wasn't qualified enough to contribute ideas, that I should stick to assisting. I didn't have the degree they wanted, just the experience." The hypocrisy hit everyone like a punch. A genius, rejected because of a paper. A man who understood aircraft better than half the boardroom. A mind overlooked because of his appearance, age, and background. Alexander lifted the notebook gently. "This notebook," he said to the crowd, "should have been in a museum. Engineers should have studied it. Students should have learned from it." Then he turned to Elijah, voice full of outrage and admiration. "And you carried it alone for decades?" Elijah nodded. "I didn't want it to die with me." Alexander's voice broke completely. "Sir, this notebook could still change the world." The crowd gasped again. Elijah blinked in confusion. "What do you mean?" Alexander took a deep breath. "Because the technology you sketched out, those ideas, they're exactly what my aerospace company has been searching for. The missing piece we never solved." The airport seemed to inhale collectively. Elijah stared at him, shocked.
You mean, after all these years, my ideas still matter? Alexander smiled with tears in his eyes. Sir, your ideas are about to transform the future of aviation. Your work wasn't forgotten. It was waiting for this moment. The staff exchanged stunned looks. Passengers wiped tears silently. Even security softened. But Alexander wasn't done. He turned toward the crowd, holding the old notebook up like a sacred artifact. Everyone will finally know who Elijah Carter is and what he created. Elijah's knees weakened. His eyes filled. His entire life, his sacrifices, his struggles, his genius finally meant something again. And this was only the beginning. Because Part 5 would reveal the final truth, the one that would shock the entire nation.
The crowd in the airport was silent, overwhelmed by the weight of the truth. Elijah Carter, the old man everyone had mocked and humiliated just moments ago, was no ordinary man. He was a genius, a hero, a mentor whose kindness had shaped a billionaire's life, and now the entire nation would soon know. Alexander Reed knelt beside him again, whispering softly, "Sir, you've given the world more than you'll ever know." Elijah shook his head, tears rolling down his cheeks. I was just trying to survive, son. I never wanted attention." Alexander smiled warmly. "Attention doesn't matter. Impact does. And yours is immeasurable." The airport staff, including Carly, now approached slowly, heads bowed in shame. Carly whispered, her voice trembling, I'm so sorry, sir. I had no idea." Elijah looked at her, his eyes gentle. "Kindness costs nothing. Respect costs nothing. You can start there." Her eyes welled up with tears. She nodded, silently grateful for his forgiveness. Meanwhile, Alexander turned to the crowd, now filming, whispering, and sharing the story across social media. He held the leather notebook high. "This," he announced, "is the work of a man who has lived a life of sacrifice, courage, and brilliance. Elijah Carter's inventions have saved lives, shaped industries, and inspired generations." Passengers clapped softly, some wiped tears. The story was spreading fast. Phones recorded, videos uploaded. Within minutes, the entire nation would know the truth. Alexander placed a hand on Elijah's shoulder again. "Sir, I want the world to honor you. The museum in Atlanta has asked for your work. They want to dedicate an exhibition to your late daughter and your legacy." Elijah's lips trembled into a small, proud smile. "My daughter. She would have loved that." Alexander turned back to the staff. "And let this be a lesson to all of you. Never judge someone by their clothes, their age, or their quiet demeanor. You never know who they are or how they've shaped the world around you." The staff nodded solemnly. Passengers nodded. Even the airport security team felt humbled. As Elijah walked toward the boarding gate, his small backpack slung over his shoulder, Alexander matched his pace. "Shall we?" he asked softly. Elijah nodded. The billionaire and the old man, mentor and student, now walked side by side through the airport, a symbol of redemption, respect, and humanity restored. The world had seen what true greatness looks like, and it wasn't wealth, uniforms, or titles. It was kindness, wisdom, and a courage to rise above life's hardships. And for everyone watching this story, remember, be careful how you treat people. You never know which quiet stranger might have changed the world or saved your life. If this story inspired you, comment below
Which part moved you the most? Tell us your country. We love seeing our community from all over the world. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more incredible, true-to-life stories that will shock, inspire, and uplift you. Your support helps us bring these amazing stories to life every single week.